Here's the situation. You're thinking of moving to the Pacific Northwest, but you're curious which is better, living in Washington or living in Oregon. Let me help you avoid making the worst or best decision of your life. As someone who's lived in both states, Washington for 2 decades and Oregon now for 7 years, I want to show you the ultimate Washington versus Oregon comparison to help you save time and money moving to the wrong place. Which one do you think will win? There's 3 main ways to compare Oregon versus Washington. First, we have to define there are 2 main ways to live in both states, in or around big cities like Seattle and Portland, or in the more rural Pacific Northwest. So the cost of living in Oregon is generally lower than in Washington, and housing costs are generally more affordable in Oregon too. The average home in Seattle can be around $1 million, while the average home in Portland can be around $700,000. Even in White Salmon, only 12 minutes across the Columbia River from Hood River, the average home in White Salmon is $1 million and up, while Hood River is in the $700,000. So 30% can be a huge difference. Even healthcare can be 20% higher in Washington versus Oregon. But other general costs like food, transportation, and other housing costs are only a 3 to 7% difference. The big factor is that housing has skyrocketed in Washington and Seattle specifically. But in Washington, you have 0 personal income tax, while Oregon has no sales tax. With wages being generally higher in Washington as well, those can be huge deciding factors for some. A little secret is that you don't live in Oregon full-time, then you can technically avoid the income tax altogether. Depending on where you live in Washington, there is a way to get the best of both worlds. I'll explain in a moment. So what's it like living in Washington versus Oregon? In the cities, since Portland is more near the coast, it gets more rain than Seattle. But Portland gets more sun, while Seattle is known as a gloomy, overcast city. Now, living in rural Pacific Northwest, the Hood River area located within the Columbia River Gorge experiences greater temperature extremes compared to White Salmon. Hood River is more prone to colder winters with ice storms due to cold air funneling through the gorge, as well as hotter summers from interior air masses being funneled in. White Salmon, outside the gorge, receives more frequent light rains. Additionally, Hood River is directly exposed to strong east winds channeled through the gorge, while White Salmon's location on the Columbia River shelters it from the most intense wind. But the further east you go towards the Dalles, the drier it gets. I would say that the Washington side gets better sun because it's southwest facing. When it comes to things to do and amenities in Washington versus Oregon, what's the difference? From outdoor activities in the mountains and along the coastline to museums, culture, and a food scene, there's a big difference. So let's break down Washington first. Washington State is an outdoorsy paradise with opportunities for hiking in the Cascade Mountains, Mount Rainier National Park, and Alpine Lakes Wilderness, exploring the Olympic National Park and enjoying the water in Puget Sound. The views in Seattle are world-class with the Puget Sound Mountain, water, and greenery. And while both the rural Pacific Northwest, Hood River and White Salmon, and Columbia River Gorge areas have great views, the Washington side has slightly better views of Mount Hood from afar. Seattle and Portland both have lively art and culture scenes. But the food in Seattle is very diverse, from seafood at Pike Place Market to a delicious steak dinner at El Gaucho. Heading to Oregon, you'll find a state known for its natural beauty. There, the hiking opportunities are endless in the Columbia River Gorge, the Cascade Range, Mount Hood area, and Smith Rock State Park. Oregon also offers countless beautiful views and places to explore, such as the Oregon Coast and Crater Lake National Park. Portland has a range of cultural attractions, such as the Portland Art Museum, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, and the Lansu Chinese Garden. The city is also a paradise for food lovers, with a thriving food cart scene, farm-to-table restaurants, and a strong craft beer culture. Here you'll also find a laid-back culture with a strong indie music scene, microbreweries, and arts community in events like the Portland International Film Festival and the Portland Rose Festival, besides great schools and tons of sports options to practice and watch. So in the Columbia River Gorge on the Oregon side, you have easier access to Portland, but Hood River is more developed than White Salmon. But if you're looking for views, the Washington side of the Columbia River Gorge edges out the Oregon side. However, the Oregon side of the Columbia River Gorge edges out the Washington side when it comes to the sheer number and concentration of prime outdoor attractions like waterfalls, hiking trails with dramatic scenery, and scenic driving routes packed with viewpoints and stops. But what's it like for families living in Washington versus Oregon? Well, Washington has generally better funded schools in Seattle compared to Portland. So when you combine slightly better schools, slightly safer areas, and more affordable homes, the Oregon side of the Columbia River Gorge probably wins. While this may be a lot to remember, I prepared something really special for you, an Oregon versus Washington comparison sheet so that you can easily compare the two in your move to the Pacific Northwest. Just check the description below for the free download. So who wins, Oregon or Washington, and who should live in one over the other? I've lived in the Columbia River Gorge for 7 years now after moving from Seattle, and I am loving every second of it. I can't see myself moving anywhere else. Now, I want to hear from you. If you're thinking of moving to Washington or Oregon, which one would you choose and why? Tell me in the comments below and I'll try to answer as many as possible. So if you made it to this point in the video, there's a good chance that you're probably looking to move to Washington or Oregon, or you're looking for your next home in one of these states, and I would love to help you with that. All you have to do is email me at jen@jdreteam.com to get started. As one of the top real estate agents in the area, my main goal is helping people like you with one of their biggest assets, their homes. So if you're looking to buy or sell in the Columbia River Gorge, then reach out. I'll leave my contact info below in the description. But hey, if you're having doubts about living here and you want to know more about the other cities before deciding, then check out my best and worst Columbia River Gorge cities video next. Tier list ranking the cities in the area to help you out. I'll link that up top here, so click here to see which cities I ranked the worst and the best. See you next time.